listen, I want to put another weight on your shoulders this morning. And I want you to speak to me. But before we do that, I'm going to show the listeners three videos of what happened in what you can expect on South African roads lately. So if you will bear with us for a moment, I'm just going to show them these videos quickly. Ja, is hy nou ja, die polisie beamptes wat wat 'n geldwa afgetrek het en toe nou beroof het. Hier is video's daarvan. Hier is die eerste een wat ek gaan wys.
You are driver, you said like this. What is? Hello, what's the deal with you? Give me 20. Israel, Israel. Yeah. No, what? No, what is Israel? I understand Israel. Yeah. I will buy this here, please. Sorry? No, you are driver, you said like this. You see, the straight up as I told you. I just between you. No, I don't do. Like I'm quite okay with my. So where's your permit for your firearm? Yeah, we're using a book. A book? A book? Yeah. You need to have a common book. Yeah, we're using a book. They don't do it. So you turn on the permit in the because me, I have a permit for carrying a firearm. Yeah. Where's your Where's the gun? Where's the gun?
Ek het my hart het nou gaan staan amper van skone skok hierso. Ek dink nie dis nodig om die ander video's te wys nie. Chat. I think this one is telling us enough. Where are you? There you are. And stop sharing. There you go. Chat, my heart jumped. I couldn't believe what I saw.
Yeah, I feel much the same as you. I think the Afrikaners have a word, skokwekkend. It's unbelievable sometimes when we see how blatant and emboldened criminality has become in South Africa. In that particular instance, it was a complete setup. There was a so-called traffic stop a little bit further up the road, and as they were slowing down for this traffic stop, a police vehicle came in behind them. And then if you look further on in the video, you'll see that during the time that they start asking the security officers for their firearm licenses, etc., suddenly the police step back and two men in plain clothes step forward with firearms and pull these guys out the vehicle. There have been arrests in terms of the so-called blue light gangs, and there has been proof that there's police complicity. But the fact that these arrests are taking place is a positive development in all of this, because we haven't reached that failed state status as yet where we have more bad police officers than we have more good police officers. We still have good police officers. We still have good prosecutors. Unfortunately, the system is stacked against the good police officers. The system is stacked against the good prosecutors. And more importantly, it's stacked against us as the citizenry in this country, because criminals are taking more and more chances. And I call these policemen that are committing crimes, criminals in blue. They're using the badge as a gang. They're using the firearms issued to them as elements of a crime, as something that they can use to commit crime. And unfortunately, because of the low rate of conviction in South Africa, you see that these police officers are taking more and more chances that they wouldn't have taken previously. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One of the reasons is that teachers don't become teachers because they want to see the best in children. Nurses don't become nurses because they want to see their patients healed. And people no longer become police officers because they want to see justice in our land. People are doing this simply because it's a job. They send out their CV to every single possible department imaginable, and whichever job lands. So without it being a vocation anymore, you don't have your old-fashioned policeman who wants to make a difference, the nurse that wants to make a difference, the teacher that wants to make a difference. So it's become a bit of a societal problem. At the same time, you have an issue within the South African Police Service where you see a lot of infighting amongst the generals. The generals all want the top spots. You see leaks on mainstream as well as on social media in respect of one general taking on another general, accusing another general of nepotism, another general of corruption. So can you imagine being a junior member and seeing this playing out with the senior members? It's creating an environment rich to be exploited by bad actors that are working within that environment. And it's, of course, extremely concerning. If you look at IPID, who we rely on to investigate crimes committed by police, they have on average 5,000 new cases they open each year, but their backlog currently sits at just under 15,000. So you've got a couple of hundred people, a lot of which are not investigators. They are primarily administrators at IPID that are carrying an extreme amount of cases. If you look at the Gauteng Anti-Corruption Unit that are meant to investigate SAPS, Traffic Department, Metro Police, as well as any other tender fraud, etc., they've got less than 20 members. So there's no accountability, there's no consequences. So you're going to see more and more policemen acting badly. But you've got a minister and a commissioner who's drawn the line. And you're seeing a lot more police officers being arrested, and they're putting it out in the public domain. They're not hiding behind that blue line.
But nevertheless, what shocks me about this, and you talked about it now as well, you made the point of not being a failed state yet. But things like this, if you look at failed states, look at South American states, Bolivia, and those places, this sort of thing is part and parcel of what's happening in a failed state, and this is happening all the more in our society.
It's a frightening situation because if you look at the failed state scenario that plays out around the world, it's mostly in war zones. It's where you have sectarian violence or you have tribalism. When one looks at the South American example, which we've compared ourselves to over the last 2 to 3 decades, especially when it comes to the transshipment of drugs, because we become one of the biggest transshipment points in the world. When it comes to kidnap for ransom, when it comes to murder for hire, we were very quick to compare ourselves to the way Colombia was in the late 80s, early 90s, the way Mexico was in the late 1990s, going into the 2000s. But Mexico has actually been able to turn it around from the Mexico that we saw pre-COVID, where you had bodies piling up and this ongoing low-intensity war between law enforcement as well as rival cartels, and in some instances, law enforcement joining some of those cartels. They seem to be reversing it. We're seeing much the same in Colombia. So there's hope. We just have to concentrate in South Africa on the problems that we have. And the biggest concern I have is last week, General Lebeya, the erstwhile head of the Hawks, who takes retirement in April, May of this year, said that they've made progress, they've overcome certain challenges, but they're still sitting at 51% capacity. That means that the majority of the members are carrying sometimes double, sometimes triple the amount of dockets they should be carrying. And the state isn't looking towards law enforcement as a return on investment. They're looking at it purely as an expense. But if you have a capacitated investigative component you have a capacitated DPCI, a capacitated NPA, a capacitated asset forfeiture unit. You can bring money back into the fiscus. You're able to hit the criminals the hardest. And that means you can use that money through the CARA program and social development programs, and to further resource the police and further resource the prosecutors. The stats that we get from the NPA and from the police are very skewed, because you hear about the police making significant arrests, and then you hear the prosecutors telling you about their percentage of successful prosecutions. What they don't tell you is that the majority of cases aren't enrolled for prosecution because they fell short at the investigation stage. So when you hear the NPA say we have an 80% success rate in the conviction of such and such a crime, they're not telling you that it's 80% of what they enrolled. So if there were 100 cases reported, maybe they only enrolled 5 of those cases of which they had an 80% success rate. So if you go back to when cases are reported to when cases are actually finalized, that's when you see the true figures. You look at murders in South Africa, only 1 out of every 10 murders are actually resolved with a conviction. That means 9 out of every 10 murderers walk the street. If you look at rape, only 5% of rape cases are solved. And that is an area of crime that isn't as well reported as it should be. So the actual conviction rate is actually far lower than 5% because we don't actually have the true reported figures. So we need to look at this. And where's the problem lie? The problem lies in that the NPA is not going to enroll a case where they don't believe there's a prospect of a successful prosecution. So they rely on what they get from the detectives. And the detectives are not capacitated or experienced enough to give winnable cases across to the NPA. So the NPA won't enroll those matters. And therein lies a massive dilemma that we have. Last year, the Hawks very proudly announced that they had 250 new members to bolster their ranks. What they failed to mention is that those 250 new members came straight from police college. They've gone from police college into the foremost crime-fighting investigative unit in the country with zero experience, having created zero network in order for them to fulfill their obligations as seasoned investigators. They're not seasoned investigators. And we've got this massive disconnect. So the state needs to change its attitude towards law enforcement in South Africa, look at it as a potential for a return on investment. It will take us off the grey list. It will add money to the fiscus that we can use for social development projects, because therein lies the problem. Crime in South Africa has become a societal problem. With an unemployment rate in excess of 30%, you can understand why people are turning to crime. For me, it's a disconnect. For me, it's a massive issue. People are turning to crime, perhaps because they can't get food in their homes. They'll steal a loaf of bread. They won't be able to afford bail. They'll go to the awaiting trial section of prison, which is a university. It's a predatory environment, and suddenly this opportunistic criminal that wanted to feed his family is now a career criminal climbing the rungs of crime. There's something seriously wrong with the system in South Africa.
Yeah. Okay, and the wrong of the system is somewhere where you and I can't really reach.
We can't. We're reliant on the state. We can make inroads. We can support public-private sector initiatives like the E2 project that Business Against Crime South Africa initiated with SAPS, where they use security officers as force multipliers on the ground. But we don't have enough police officers per capita in South Africa. And what makes that even worse is that when they compare the numbers of police that are required per capita in the world, and it's a UN project, it's by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, they're comparing countries that don't have the serious violent crime South Africa has. So the whole world sees a massive increase in financial crime, in forex crime, in crypto crime, digital crime, scams that are taking place. In fact, there's a 40% year-on-year increase, and last year it hit $1 trillion. So the whole world talks about what they're going to do about financial crime. And then South Africa gets compared, but what they don't realize is South Africa has something else to contend with that the rest of the world doesn't have, and that's serious violent crime. So our state can't concentrate on the financial crime aspect. They're not there to concentrate on the scams. They're there to concentrate on trying to reduce contact crime. So our crime statistics are through the roof simply because we don't have enough members to investigate. And it doesn't help to have the so-called proactive Operation Chanela, boots on the ground, arresting hundreds of thousands of people every year, because those hundreds of thousands of people are out of the system within 2 days because the courts are not prepared to enroll those cases, because despite all those arrests taking place and all those high-profile press briefings that take place about Operation Chanela, what they don't talk about is the fact that those criminals are back on the street because they weren't able to give the NPA a docket that could be effectively prosecuted. So until we change our attitude towards violent crime in South Africa and we start putting more resources towards this, it is going to get worse before it gets any better.
And you know what shocks me the most? Look, it's shockingly enough when criminals like blue light gangs and so on are doing this stuff right there publicly, where you can actually see it happening. But having actual police officers involved, this is audacity at its best. Hey, I didn't know I know a word like audacity.
Look, it's frightening. We speak about it sometimes in jest, but it's true. When we're driving along a dark road at night, we get more afraid if we see blue lights pull up behind us than we see a car that wants to overtake us. And we shouldn't be like that. These are the people we meant to trust the most. These are the people that are meant to be keeping us away from crime. They're meant to be protecting us. We've put all of our trust in them. And yet there are these bad apples, and we shouldn't be afraid. You've even got signage now on vehicles that say this vehicle will not pull over for the police unless it's at a police station or a petrol station or a well-lit area. So we know there's a massive problem there. And one has to ask oneself the question, how are these guys equipping themselves? Why don't police have some other system where they can identify other police vehicles on the road, that if they're driving and that vehicle doesn't ping in their vehicle as being a fellow police vehicle, well, hold on a second, that vehicle is a clone. Let's pull it. Let's find out what's going on here. We've got the most sophisticated technology in the world. Why don't we have a war room that shows each and every legitimate police vehicle, that when you're patrolling an area, you expect to see a vehicle, and if you don't expect to see a vehicle and you do see a police vehicle, you start scratching your head and thinking, well, who are these oaks?
Yeah. And then to complicate the matter further, it looked like there's also a Metro police officer involved. So there's like a network working on this from legal platforms.
So if one goes to the most recent episode of Crime Watch with Yusuf Abramji, which aired this past Sunday on ENCA, and they're able to download it if they're on social media, they can also find it on ETV's EVOD. They will see that Yusuf looked specifically at cops gone bad. He looked specifically at the blue light gangs. He looked specifically at members of Metro Police, etc. You saw a lot of arrests be made by IPID. He interviewed the executive director of IPID. She told him about the challenges that they currently are facing. But you see that it's across the board, whether it's a traffic cop, whether it's a Metro Police official, whether it's an actual policeman, or whether it's somebody impersonating any of the previous three, it's become a massive problem. And these guys are part of extortion syndicates. And you've got police that are also equipping bad actors who are not necessarily policemen, because these guys are getting police bulletproof vests, they're getting police reflective vests, they're getting blue lights, they're getting sirens, they're getting firearms from the police. So it means that even the guys that aren't police officers, who are impersonating police officers, may still be connected to legitimate police officers who are equipping them.
This is Chad Thomas talking to us about this. This is shocking. I'm so despondent, and I even didn't know that I know a word like despondent, man. So it must tell you how despondent I am. Chad, thank you very, very much for talking to us and informing us on this matter. Thank you. Dankie, my maat.
Isak, just in closing, I do believe that our Minister Senzo Mchunu is saying the right things and has become victim-centric and wants to make a change. We also have oversight from Ian Cameron, and he seems to be wanting to make a difference with his portfolio committee. So it isn't all bad news, and there's still good police officers out there. There's still good prosecutors out there. So we can't give up the fight. We just have to be realistic that in South Africa, everybody's taking a chance when it comes to crime.
Thank you, Chad Thomas. I'll speak to you again sometime.
Thank you, sir.
All the best.
You too.
To a lesser man, and it's only physically.
Cheers, my friend.
It's Thomas wat met ons gepraat het oor daardie skokkende voorval